All right, here we go. Welcome back, everybody, to Wisdom and Wanderlust. My name is Michael Bennett, co-founder of ExploreX. Joined today by my colleague Amanda. Robin, our other colleague, is out exploring this week. So excited to hear what she's getting herself into and hear from her next week. On behalf of the entire ExploreX team around the world, thank you for being with us today. We are, as always, really excited to have our friends, partners, and colleagues in Scotland with us today. We have Ken Keith and Russell Murray, and they're going to talk about everything from, as you just may have heard, whiskey to weather to their sense of wanderlust and all of the hidden places and perspectives that Scotland has to offer a traveler. So super pumped for that conversation. Before we get into that, just a few notes. If you are new to the ExploreX community, welcome. You can learn more about who we are, what we do, what makes us so special on our website, which is www.explorer-x.com. While you're there, cruise on over to our membership tab. You can learn more about our new membership program that we recently launched. Tons of great benefits for travelers in our traveler community there. So please be sure to check that out. We also recently launched a destinations page, which highlights some of the destinations around the world that we have the deepest and most powerful connections and relationships with, and frankly, the places that inspire us to want to travel. So you can check that out on our website as well. Scotland, of course, is one of those places, so you can learn much more about Scotland there. And this recording will be uploaded to the Scotland page on our website after this the webinar. If you do have any questions at all about this webinar, about ExploreX, if you just want to chat with us, if you're thinking about traveling at some point now or in the future, we always love to talk to and chat with our travelers in our community. So feel free to email us at hello@explorer-x.com. And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at GoExploreX. I think that's it, Amanda. Anything that I missed there?
No, but I do have a few housekeeping items.
Awesome.
As Michael said, we are recording this. We are going to try and keep this as close to an hour as possible, but we will email everyone a link afterwards. And if you have any questions as we go along, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We'll be answering questions throughout and at the end as well. Before I pass it back to Michael, I just want to kind of briefly chat about my story with Scotland, because it has had such a strong impact on my life and is one of my absolute favorite places on earth. I grew up in Michigan, went to college in state, worked 4 years at a local travel company. And while I love to travel, I never lived more than 20 minutes from where I grew up. I was in my late 20s, went through a breakup and the pivotal, what am I doing with my life moment? As is the common theme around here. I decided leaving the state wasn't quite enough. I needed to really challenge myself, and because languages are not my strong suit, I limited my options to the UK and New Zealand. But since my heritage is Scottish, I thought I'd give it a go. And even though I'd never been there before and I didn't know anyone, I packed my bags and hopped on a plane and moved across the pond, as they say. From the moment I arrived, I felt as though I were being welcomed home. The people were overwhelmingly kind and friendly, to the point the lady helping me open a bank account offered me all of her information to join them for Christmas supper with her family. Even though I told her I already had 3 invitations because everybody was doing the same thing, she made sure to write down her details, and she said, if any of those fall through and you have nowhere to go, please come visit my family. And it's just the way I experienced everything there. People were just overwhelmingly kind and generous and welcoming. My new Scottish friends also introduced me to 3 of my favorite things: hiking, rugby, and whiskey, as we were talking about earlier. I ended up working for a local travel company and spent 2 years in Scotland until my visa ran out. It's been nearly 10 years since I've left. I do visit every couple of years because it still feels like home. Scotland's just stunningly beautiful, and the people, as I said, are truly some of the most wonderful I've met anywhere in the world. If you haven't been, I couldn't more strongly recommend a visit. And if you have been, I'm sure you'll agree, it's there's just something special about the country and the people, and it'll draw you back again and again. So I just wanted to share my perspective on Scotland, because it has been such an important part of my life and will continue to be for many years to come, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. When I think about Scotland and hear your stories, talk to Russell, talk to Ken, I have not yet had the opportunity to visit or taken the opportunity to visit, although, truly and genuinely, it is literally in the top 2 or 3 of places that I will travel to as soon as we are able to do so. But I think about our philosophy of travel with ExploreX, right? About getting off the beaten path and getting out into nature and exploring that, and connecting with cultures, people, traditions, heritage, stories, wisdom, ancient wisdom, all of these things, right? With dramatic landscapes and all of that. Scotland it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to visit Scotland. It's one of the reasons that we're so excited to work with our team there and to be able to promote Scotland as a destination for our travelers, because I think, for the type of travel that we promote and design and engage with our community in, Scotland's an amazing destination. So with that said, I'm going to shut up, and we're going to get it over to the team at Russell and Ken here, so they can sort of introduce themselves. I certainly would not be able to do it justice. So Russell and Ken, guys, thanks so much for being here with us today, and welcome.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So let's just start at the very top. If you can maybe both just briefly introduce yourselves, tell us, what you're up to, where you live, and what's new and exciting. That's a good place to start for us.
Okay, I'll kick off. Ken here. Living currently in a little fishing village called Ullapool, which is right up in the northwest coast of Scotland. I was born originally, literally born in Inverness, because where we were living at the time didn't actually have a maternity wing in the hospital. So my mother had to be driven up what some people might know as the Great Glen, right up a huge continental rift to Inverness itself. We lived in Fort William. And then a little bit like Amanda, I spent the bulk of my adult life down in Edinburgh, and then maybe touch on it a little bit later. Saw the light and decided I wanted to move back up to the countryside again. So I'm up here in the northwest at the moment.
Yeah, not dissimilar to Ken. Grew up in the Highlands. Played shinty, which is a Scottish sport, a bit like hurling or hockey. So strong Highland culture from childhood, and then moved away for university, actually, to the home of golf, St Andrews. I'm not an amazing golfer, but we can cover that later. Golf, I worked in the whiskey industry for a bit, and then returned to the Highlands to work for foreign in travel, which I've not regretted or looked back on. And enjoy my base. I'm tuning in from actually just a little bit south of Ken, in the village of Aviemore, which is in the UK's largest national park, which is the Cairngorms, where we run and operate trips from as well.
Awesome, thanks, guys. Russell, let me start with you. Where did your sense of wanderlust come from?
Yeah, it's a good question, Michael. I was sort of reflecting on that earlier. I guess it probably stems from definitely childhood trips with my father. Maybe quite unusual. We were pretty young, and we used to go on kind of open canoe trips into some of the remote lochs and glens across the northwest of Scotland. So one of the big trips we did was down Loch Shiel. So we went from Rannoch Moor on the sort of west coast, and then finished up at Loch Shiel, which is quite an iconic place where Bonnie Prince Charlie raised the standard for the Jacobite rebellion. So lots of history there. But that sense of just traveling in your backyard, and then beyond that, I studied languages. So there was always a draw to use the languages and then travel further afield, Spanish and Russian. So yeah, that's probably the story, sort of childhood off the beaten path trips with my dad.
And is that what inspired you to want to get into the travel industry as a career?
I think for me, it just comes, it always comes back to sort of being from Scotland and being happy to talk about it, and sort of, you know, what's the word? You know, people are always genuinely interested about what it is to be Scottish, culture, interests, and I enjoy that. I enjoy kind of spreading the enthusiasm for Scotland, and I guess that's always been at the root of, you know, sort of enjoying traveling and then hosting clients here in Scotland, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, what about you? Where did your sense of wanderlust stem from?
I can probably narrow that down to the days. I used to be a Boy Scout. I'm racking my brains to think if that means anything across the water. But basically, when I was about 12 years old, Boys Brigade, Boy Scouts, and I had two leaders that were so gung ho with our age group. It was quite refreshing. So they would get us on summer camps in really remote glens. Health and safety these days probably wouldn't allow it. And they would take us, some of us kicking and screaming, up mountains in Scotland that we call Munros. So if it's over 3,000 feet in Scotland, we call it a Munro, after the gentleman who came up with a list. So we would go up these hills, and there was just something magical for me. It was just something I'd never experienced before. So that kicked it all off. And probably because latterly I got myself involved in financial services for about 15 years down in Edinburgh. That was always going to come to an end. So I then thought, you know what, let's go and experience those Munros to me. And here I am sitting talking to you today. So it's great.
Well, I'm curious, kind of, if you don't mind diving in here a little bit deeper, was there something specific that happened, or just sort of this internal sense of, I need change, I need something different in my life? I mean, because I feel like going from...
Yeah, pretty much. I think I always had a real love of the outdoors, and I've always been involved with mountain rescue teams as well, and they encourage you to take qualifications in the outdoors, so you can train some of the other guys in the team and bring them on. So even when I was in financial services, I had the qualifications I needed to be a guide, and it was just... the job became a numbers game towards the end. It was very easy for me to walk away from that. I enjoyed Edinburgh, but I was really not going to come to much being a mountain guide down in the central belt of Scotland. So moving up to the Highlands was a must. And I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know how successful it was going to be. But I'm pleased to say that even a couple of years in at the time, I've been doing guiding now for about 10 years. I realised that thankfully I'd made the right move.
You know, at the risk of sounding hokey, Ken, you know, one of the things that we talk a lot about with our travelers is, you know, listening to that inner compass, right, and following that longing and that call. And you know, we talk a lot, and we won't get into it now, but about the hero's journey and the work that Joseph Campbell did to build out that model. And so many people, maybe all of us, feel a call at certain times in our life, you know, to change, to do something different. And you know, unfortunately, most of us refuse that call. So it's, and then we get stuck in patterns of confusion and anger and frustration and ick, you know. And so listening to Amanda, and Amanda's sort of calling to go and travel and do something different, you know, even if it was another English-speaking destination, to really get out and push her comfort zones and explore. And then your story of just sort of saying, hey, I'm going to give up this, you know, financially successful career to pursue passions is inspiring. So awesome. So Ken, you've been guiding. How long have you been guiding now officially?
Yeah, 2010 was when I moved up to the village of Ullapool, and that's when I started guiding. Very much just put out leaflets in the local village, took out a website, and see where it went from there. And there was just every now and again somebody got in touch, and it used to be young families on holiday in the area. And something that I used to do more often than I do these days is rock climbing. So young families, just you can imagine, what do we do with the kids today? Oh, there's a guy locally who's got all the equipment. Let's go to a nice seaside cliff and do some climbing. And then as each year went by, just gradually got busier and busier until I started doing more week-long trips with local tour operator, and absolutely loved it from there. It was great. I enjoy that ability as a guide to get alongside travelers more during a week. I find my role as a guide can be so much more if you're with people for a week rather than just a quick one day or even an afternoon.
Yeah, 100%. As we were chatting yesterday, you know, this, and one of the beautiful things about the people, the community that we've built at ExploreX is just that so many of our travelers they're curious, right? They want to learn, right? And so when we have a great guide like you, who's there to not only, you know, navigate them through, you know, the nature experiences and all of that, whether it's rock climbing or a hike or a walk or whatever it might be, but really give them an insider's perspective on the culture, the history, right? You know, all the nuances of what's going on in a destination. It makes it that much richer and that much more vivid. So all right, let's take a quick step back, because I think one thing that we wanted to sort of set the foundation for, and this seems like a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Question, but let's start here. Briefly explain for us, Russell, if you will, or Ken, either way, what's the difference between the United Kingdom, Great Britain, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, Wales? Help us navigate through that, because I think it's a question that some people have and maybe are afraid to ask.
Let me take that one up. Sorry to hog the camera. I hope you don't mind, but I get asked that one a lot as a guide because, and before becoming a guide, I'll be the first person to ask. I didn't know the answer either. It's a bit weird. And you've got the British Isles to throw in there as well if you really want to mix it up. I'll come on to that in a minute. But the Great Britain thing is primarily a geographical thing. So it is, and historically has been, a combination of England, Wales and Scotland. And the reason the Great Brit is in there because France have Brittany. So it was to differentiate between Brittany and Britain. So Britain got Great Britain, basically. So even when you go back to 1707, which I'm sure some of the historians amongst us will know was that fateful day, oops, did I say that, when Scotland and England became a union. And that's when Great Britain formally established itself. But then there's Ireland. And Ireland came into the mix about 100 years later, early 1800s. And quite simply, in order to bring Ireland into that, they called it the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So that's where the United Kingdom bit comes in. And that's more a political thing than a geographical thing.
Got it. Okay, so that I understand this, Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland are all individual countries that together compose or comprise the United Kingdom, and then the island of Great Britain is Scotland, England, and Wales.
Correct. It's the mainland, if you like. Poor Wales have always been attached to England all along historically. Scotland came along in 1707, and then if you want to actually put a circle around everything, so you've got the Republic of Ireland in there as well as Northern Ireland, and you've even got the Isle of Man. If you want to do all that, then that's the British Isles. So absolutely everything. You're still confused, I think.
No. It makes sense. You've explained that eloquently. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
I have a question for you, because when I was there, sporting events, we often would hear ABE, anyone but England, for sports, going to rugby matches and whatnot. How is the relationship between Scotland and England? I know there was a referendum, and other people have heard things in the news, but are a little confused by that these days. How is that relationship playing out? And
Yeah, and you know what, Amanda, rightly to be confused because most people in Scotland at the moment, as well as England and Wales and Northern Ireland, are fairly confused, and that's probably more to do with Brexit than anything else. But I have some of my best friends are English. I've got four cousins who are English, and I love meeting up with them because they've got great stories to tell, and we have a positive joke about the differences between Scotland and England. I think possibly if you read a history book, you'll discover why there's an underlying current of animosity between Scotland and England. And if you twist my arm a little bit further, I would probably suggest that the English sporting teams now, I know across the water, maybe rugby and our soccer with a round ball aren't too familiar with you, but the English teams, coaches, players can border on a level of arrogance that maybe Scotland, Ireland and Wales don't appreciate so much. So I think that's probably as about serious as it gets, if you know what I mean. But everything's in the melting pot at the moment. Nobody, even in this country, is 100% sure what it's going to look like after the 1st of January next year, when Brexit finally and formally comes into play. We're supposed to be striking a deal before then with the rest of Europe. Some skeptics would say there's no chance of a deal, therefore we'll just have to go our separate ways. But to be honest, for anybody looking in, any travellers concerned, the only implications are going to be for Russell and I, with new passports, trying to get into the rest of Europe. It will be more paperwork. It will be delays at checkpoints. But for anybody coming in out with Europe, you should notice absolutely no difference to when you did it last year.
Okay, that's great to know for our travelers.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And if anyone that's listening does have any further questions, they can always, about Brexit or some of the history between England and Scotland, we'll say this later, but you can email us both at hello@or scotland@explorer-x.com, and we'll be sure to answer your questions there. One other thing that has obviously been in the news that has been limiting travel is COVID. So Ken or Russell, I'm not sure who to address this question to, but can you just quickly give us an update on the COVID situation in Scotland and what that's like, who can travel there, and what your outlook might be for the next few months?
Yeah, Michael, again, maybe I can take that one up because it is confusing. I mean, it'll be no different across the water. We're seeing an upturn in numbers at the moment. Numbers of affected, thankfully, rather than pure deaths. And I think a good reason for the numbers going up in terms of those that are affected is because we're just testing so much more now than we did 4-6 months ago. But all that means in a day-to-day world for Russell and I is we can only have a maximum number of 6 people from two households outside. And they're totally discouraging you socializing indoors. And there's various restrictions, or socially spacing in restaurants is another big one at the moment. For me personally, if I was to swing my laptop around 180 degrees, you would see nothing but countryside. So I've been fortunate enough right through the whole COVID thing to be able to walk out my front door. To me personally, thankfully, these days we can drive as far as we want. So there's no mileage limitation as to how far we can jump in a car and go. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Ken, to that is just kind of emphasising the sort of case numbers in the Highlands and Islands, which is where the majority of our trips and experiences take place. And even since the start, the first wave, as it were, the caseload in the Highlands has been very low and largely very well contained, which is positive for our trips. And we are still running trips despite the sort of slight further restrictions. But yeah, very few cases in the Highlands and Islands, just due to the sparse population. So that that is positive, and it means we can keep running trips with an eye on obviously protocols.
Yeah, I think Scotland did a very good job at locking down pretty early and taking things pretty seriously early on, in my understanding. So I think Scotland's done quite well comparatively to the US especially.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, guys. And I think, we certainly pride ourselves on being a traveler community that is truly global. And the reality is that 90% of our traveler base and our community is based here in North America, mostly the United States. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few months, and hopefully things get better, and we can begin traveling to Scotland as soon as possible. Hopefully by next spring or next summer at the latest. So, but and again, and as you were sort of pointing out in terms of getting out into the Highlands, Russell, like, again, so much of our approach to travel is about getting out of the cities and getting out and into the countryside and into the more remote destinations and the smaller towns and villages, and doing that responsibly and ethically and all of that stuff in the time of COVID. So it's good to know that it's the case numbers are down there. So Russell, a couple more questions for you, or let's start here. You've talked a lot about what makes Scotland so special. Tell us a little bit more about the overall geography of Scotland for those of us that are, again, maybe still learning about Scotland and understanding where it is and what the different regions are, where people travel to, et cetera. Give us an overview of that.
Sure. So in terms of the sort of Scotland geography, I guess to simplify, we normally talk about roughly three regions or areas. You've got the lowlands, where the big cities are. That's normally the entry point for a lot of our tours and experiences. So Glasgow, Edinburgh being typical. Sort of rural countryside, rolling hillside terrain. It's quite gentle in comparison to the Highlands. The second region would probably be the Highlands, I would say, if we're simplifying. The most mountainous region in the UK. Some fantastic peaks. And mountains that we love getting clients out there on with the likes of Ken and some of our other guides. And then you've got a kind of third kind of area, if you like, which are the islands. And Scotland has a surprisingly large number of islands. I don't know the exact number, but it's a phenomenal number of small islands that can all be accessed and explored by a private boat, or some of the ferries, or indeed by sea kayak or sailing. So the islands being Shetland, Orkney, you've got the Hebridean Islands of like Lewis and Harris, then Inner Hebrides, Arran, Rum, and even Skye would be in there as well. So three regions. Sorry, Michael, was there any other areas there you're wanting to touch on?
No, I mean, I think that's a good overview. I mean, I guess the other questions would sort of be, and this is maybe a bit of a lazy question, or a generic question, but for people that have not traveled to Scotland before, like what is a classic route, that would allow them to experience all the differences, and can you hit all three of those regions in one trip and do it in less than a month, or how do you typically approach, or what do you typically recommend in terms of how much time and where to go?
Yeah, I think for that first time visit, what I often see is that triangle, which kind of refer to it as a triangle, which is like the city, the ancient capital, Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, being your kind of start or finish, and then you've got the Highlands and the Islands, actually just covering those three areas, and then the Highlands typically being normally Inverness-shire, Loch Ness Monster. You can cover the Cairngorms where I'm based. And then, of course, the islands being Skye. Skye is often the tick box for the islands. It is an island. You have to travel across the bridge to get there. And that would tick off the islands. That's like your typical triangle tour. And, of course, from there, you can branch off and do a little bit more interesting tours. So you can go beyond Skye to some of the other islands, maybe Mull, some of the other Hebridean Islands, or you could branch off into Royal Deeside, or go up to where Ken is, the northwest, up to Ullapool and the north coast, if you've got a bit longer. In terms of time frame, that triangle, I would say you could do in a week. I would rather it was 10 days to really get the most out of it, and better still 2 weeks to really get an immersive experience and maybe cover some of the points we'll talk about later in terms of local characters, behind the scenes access, all that is kind of immersion and maybe even transformative travel.
Yeah, actually, Amanda, I'm going to ask you a question as someone who is not from Scotland, but has spent quite a bit of time there. How would you describe Edinburgh? Like, what's it like?
The city. Oh, yeah. It's my favorite because it's a big city, but there aren't any skyscrapers. So it doesn't feel like a big city. There's cobblestone roads and historical feel to it. And it's just such a special place. I lived there for 2 years and I absolutely adore the city. I'm not a big city person. So for me, it was the best combination of being big enough to have a ton to do, lots of great restaurants and small little pubs and all of that, but not feeling too big that you can't walk around everywhere or use public transport and all of that. And it's a great base to get further out with the trains and or hiring a car or whatnot. So it was a great base for me, but I absolutely love Edinburgh. It was a fantastic city. So much to do.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, they're mowing the lawn right behind me.
Well, the scenery behind you looks beautiful. So it's a lot of lawn to mow if they're mowing that.
It is a little tricky with the hills there.
I feel like they usually let the sheep do that. No?
You'd think it would make more sense. I think.
Yeah, or llamas. Are there llamas in Scotland? I don't know. Like something.
There
I
are.
don't remember seeing any.
I've seen a few llamas on my tours. Yeah. It's become quite trendy to own llamas, apparently.
But you don't own one yet, no?
No, I'm more traditional. I'm happy with the traditional farm stock. Sheep and cattle and.
All right. So let me ask you guys this. One of the things that I think we get a sense of what the cities are like with the history and the culture there. Tell us a little bit more about the Highlands. Like what is there to do? I know it's like sort of an adventure playground, right? What are some of the things that people can do, experience, and see when they're visiting the Highlands?
Russell, me. I'm struggling to answer that one, Mike. It's such a good question, and I could spend the rest of our lovely hour together answering it. I ask a question at the start of my trips to the travellers, which kind of evolves around what are they looking forward to most, and why did they choose the trip, and then I review it all at the end of the trip and ask them what they enjoyed the most. But sometimes more revealing is what didn't they expect to get from Scotland. They just didn't see it coming. So that has a whole catalogue in my head of lovely memories and lovely experiences. And yeah, for sure, you get the whiskey experience coming across well, especially when you maybe get a more private, smaller distillery where it's more intimate, and maybe the tour is geared precisely to the clients that they're taking around. And stunning scenery. I'm biased about it because I'm on the doorstep of it, and I've lived amongst it all my life. So you're never going to go away from Scotland without feeling the scenery and the greenery of it as well. I think that takes some people by surprise as well, how green it is here. I would probably home in on one aspect of Scotland that I was interested to hear Amanda touched on right at the start. And if it is one that people are taken aback by, if it is one that people will remember, it's the people themselves. It's those unscheduled, unprompted meetings with local people at the start of a trail, at the end of a trail, where they're quite happy just to shoot the breeze, as we say in Scotland, and have a conversation about their life. I think that is as impactful sometimes as any glen or any green hillside to some people, if they can actually engage with the locals, because there is something special. There is something that I don't know if I can even sum it up in words, to be honest, that the average Scot, especially a Highlander, but that's again me being slightly biased, can bring to somebody's journey and a holiday that just touches the heart. It's quite nice. Russell, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you're pointing towards the people aspect is hugely important and a big part of what makes Scotland so special. You know, I can think of a number of trips where the spontaneous meeting with like local Hebridean tweed weaver has absolutely made the trip. It was unexpected, and he was there. Maybe owns a croft on Lewis, but also does this sort of artisan craft in the afternoon and evenings. And you end up going in and having a chat with them and understanding where the sort of family history comes from, and you know, the art of Harris Tweed. Effectively, that was one example. But there are numerous from many trips where, yeah, these encounters, local encounters, have been so memorable and almost impossible to plan in some cases. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when we talk to our travelers when they get back, they, look, they love the accommodations and the guides and some of the planned experiences. But, I think what resonates with them oftentimes are the people that they've met along the way, that were the spontaneous, unplanned, unscheduled, meet up in a coffee shop, or spoke to somebody that was staying at their hotel, or met somebody on a walking trail or a hiking trail, and became fast friends and shared stories and perspectives and ideas. And so yeah, it oftentimes does very much come down to the people that they meet along the way. Now, and as we said, oftentimes that's spontaneous, but I also know that a lot of the work that we do together is to intentionally and plan, right, some of these experiences and allow people to connect with some of the locals, whether it's a local whiskey distiller or a local farmer or someone like that, a local, kilt maker or whatever it might be. So, Russell, just maybe sort of briefly touch on some of the experiences that we, outside of the spontaneous ones, some of the experiences that we can actually plan for people that will give them an opportunity to connect with local people in a really meaningful way.
Sure, Michael. Yeah, there's a few examples. It's tough to choose one. But I mean, I'll maybe draw on a couple. I think one of the ones that resonates for me was just being able to meet a clan chief. There are hundreds of castles still in the ownership of the clans. For example, my surname's Murray. Blair Athol Castle still in the Murray clan. And in fact, you can often go. We can arrange for clients to have a kind of private viewing and tour of the castle with the current clan chief. Dinner or lunch or a dram is possible as well, and that's hugely unique, because most of the other kind of tourists are just going during the day, during public hours, en masse, as it were. Whereas we're talking about an intimate experience with it could be the 10th Earl of Murray, or the 5th Earl of Sutherland, or whatever. So that's one example. Another one that I'd like to draw on is on the West Coast, a little bit more adventurous. We have a great connection there with a specialist marine biologist who studies sharks, basking sharks. So they're the world's second largest shark to the whale shark. And actually his life is dedicated to studying and touring with the sharks during the summer season. So again, we've had this sort of planned experience where you meet the marine biologist out of Oban, and then you head out for a day or a half day with him and his team, and you can actually snorkel with these giants. They're kind of what's the word? They're non-ferocious giants, so they're vegetarian. It's safe, but they're massive. They're as big as yachts or boats sometimes. So quite overwhelming and a wonderful experience.
What's the best time of the year to see them?
Ken will correct me, but I believe it's August rings a bell for the Basking Sharks. I think that's when they're in Scottish or close to kind of viewing points.
Yeah, spot on, July, August.
Yeah, we actually had, so close to the shark family, we had, it was phenomenal this year, one of our first trips that went out sea kayaking, one of our first client experiences, they actually had orcas swim with them for an hour and a half off the Hebrides. So yeah, a couple of the guides on that trip said in their, I don't know, collective 80 years of guiding, they've never had such an experience. So I was super jealous, but the pictures were phenomenal. So yeah, we've got the unexpected here in abundance, I would say.
Yeah, I went sea kayaking when I was there, and we had a pod of porpoise all around us, and it was just so incredible just to have them all around us while we were out there kayaking. Incredible.
So you would you say that you've found your porpoise?
I found my porpoise.
Yes.
I found my life porpoise in Scotland.
Yeah. Just to go back and touch on something that Ken mentioned, part of our love for the work that we do in terms of the travel design element is really getting to know our travelers at a really deep and meaningful level. And so we'll have, even before we really begin planning an itinerary and an experience, we have, an hour-long conversation. Frankly, sometimes it lingers on to a couple hours because just we're having so much fun chatting about travel preferences and interests and things like that. And so, and all of that really helps us craft a very tailored, specific, customized trip so if someone's interested in golf, right, or fishing or whatever it might be, like we'll plan those experiences for them, and we'll give them that behind the scenes access to people and places and destinations that they just wouldn't have had a chance to get otherwise. So just know that some of these examples that Russell and Ken are sharing, certainly land and resonate, and that, if you're considering traveling to Scotland or frankly anywhere with ExploreX, part of our joy and our love and our passion for the work that we do is being able to connect with the travelers and then work with people like Ken and Russell to really make their travel dreams come true by connecting them to these people and experiences. So Ken, let me swing this back to you. One of the things that we often talk about at ExploreX is the fact that travel can be a life-changing experience, right? That people's perspectives of self and others can shift. As someone who's there on the ground guiding people on a day-to-day basis, I'd love to see or hear some of the experiences, or maybe one experience that you've had with a traveler where you've seen them, even over the course of one trip, sort of shift tangibly and begin to think about themselves or others differently.
Sure, pleasure. And I've got so many in my mind. It was difficult to actually narrow it down to one. And the one I'm going to go for, it probably works in my mind because the guiding that took place was actually in my backyard over my left shoulder here. So it was special in that realm as well. And sadly, initially, the lady I'm referring to came on a trip with me about 3 years ago with 4 or 5 other people. And she fell fairly seriously ill on the first evening, and had to be ushered into an ambulance and taken to the local hospital down in Inverness. So that was the end of our trip. But I later discovered that her main reason for going on the trip was to visit a lovely sandy beach in the north of Scotland called Sandwood Bay. And from there, you can see the mainland's most northerly lighthouse. And that transpired was where her late grandfather used to work, and she'd never seen it before. So she wanted to go there. So as a result of that trip, a guide colleague and I decided, this colleague had guided with her as well, that we would organize a follow-up trip and take her up to that bay after she'd recovered from her hospital visit. And it was uplifting for the guides as well as the lady concerned. She was tearful. She was emotional. She was delighted to be there. It's probably more impactful than if she'd gone there on the first trip, ironically, but we didn't know that. In hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. And she was sat down and she was happy to be interviewed on a short video that appeared online as well. And she was just open and honest about where she was at with this. And I think it's nature does that to you. It's these moments that you just, as a guide, you can't create them. But I think as a traveller, you're open to the prospect of something outlandish and otherworldly happening. I don't mean the hospital bit, I hasten to add. And as a guide, if you're flexible enough to be aware of those situations potentially happening, then you can certainly encourage them. And I can safely say that that's 100% why I enjoy doing this job as much. Because Scotland, at the end of the day, Scotland with its scenery and its whiskey and its golf courses and its wonderful seafood does the bulk of my job for me. But it's quite nice as a guide to bring those special moments out as well.
Yeah, and you sort of have just answered this question, but I want to ask it anyway, specifically because one of the questions that we get a lot from travelers is, should we work with a guide? Should we hire a guide? Should we do a self-drive instead? So, we always, again, budget permitting and all of those things, almost always recommend working with a guide such as you can, because it adds so much to the experience overall, and it becomes well worth it. The value is immense. But can you just add on to what you've already shared about the value of having a guide in Scotland and what role that guide plays throughout the travel experience?
Yeah, if I get this answer wrong, then I'm probably not going to be guiding for very long. I 100% love the fact that the way we operate out of Scotland is that I will drive the van that takes our travellers around Scotland. I'll look after them safely on the mountain with all my certificate and first aid back knowledge. But also I'll sit and more often than not have dinner with our travellers around a table at night and share a glass of wine and a dram. And I think it's that whole process. I'm not just taking you on a mountain and handing you back to a driver. I'm not just taking you on a mountain and handing you over to a restaurant owner. I'm there to make sure that you have absolutely, as a traveller, nothing to worry about logistically. Smell the heather and enjoy the whiskey, because everything else is taken care of in my mind. And if it doesn't sound too sycophantic, I also make sure that it's not a case of one size fits all. I like to make sure that each individual traveller is getting what they want out of that trip, and it's not just there's an itinerary, we'll do the itinerary, and at the end of it, hopefully you've enjoyed yourself. That's why I ask these questions at the start of trips, why people have chosen Scotland, what they're looking forward to most, and make sure that there's some unexpected surprises along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that a lot of our travelers that do work with guides such as yourself, Ken, they share when they get back are the stories, right? And the things that they would have never learned on their own. And yeah, they're taken care of, and they're taken up the mountain, they're taken to the restaurant and introduced to the right people. But it's also, as you sort of mentioned, like this connection with their guide, where they become friends with their guide and they get to share stories, and that adds just so much texture to their overall experience that it really, in many ways, makes the overall experience for them. So we're getting close on time here, guys. So I want to ask each of you to answer one last question before we get into some of our rapid fire questions. Ken, Russell, if you were to leave some words of wisdom for our travelers that are listening to this and our community listening to this, not necessarily even pertinent or relevant or specific to Scotland, but just travel in general, wisdom, the sense of wisdom and wanderlust, what would you share with them?
Well, I know Ken. I'm guessing that Ken might have something quite impressive. So I'm going to go first, so he doesn't. So we can play it down a little bit. But no, I think I don't have any sort of anything pre-prepared. But I think that message of being open to new experiences, pushing the comfort zones, maybe the unexpected is a healthy way to approach travel, and if that is the approach when coming to Scotland, then I think you're well on your way to having a transformational experience with us. Yeah, I would hasten you guys to visit Scotland soon. I think it's one of the most enlightening and friendly and diverse countries in the world. Even though it's tiny, it's well worth a visit. And I think under the circumstances of the pandemic, you're probably going to be looking at places with the great outdoors and lots of it. And Scotland certainly ticks that box. It's like for me, it's parts of it are like Patagonia. It's vast. A lot of it's untouched. It's one of Europe's last great wildernesses, and I would encourage you to come soon.
Yeah, amen to that. And I just chime in quickly that, the sense of curiosity and openness and willingness to engage and push comfort zones is certainly a hallmark of, what we believe in at ExploreX. And I think why it's so important to work with partners and colleagues like you guys. It provides some degree of support and confidence in the traveler to lean into parts of themselves that maybe they wouldn't if they were traveling on their own. So Ken, what about you? What wisdom will you share with our community?
I feel Russell has bigged me up here, so thanks for that one, Russell. Something I enjoy doing on some of my trips, which I absolutely poo-hooed up until about 2 or 3 years ago, is poetry. And poetry that ties in with a landscape, poetry that ties in with a certain mood. I'll not always use it. There are certain situations where it's just not appropriate. So if a short, very short 4-line poem isn't stretching the wisdom boundaries too much, and then maybe I'll finish with a good old-fashioned Scottish proverb just to settle that one down, which is linked into whiskey as well. So there's a gentleman called John O'Donoghue, who is a Celtic priest and poet, novelist, who writes many books. And I know for a fact you can get them in the States if anybody feels interested after I read this out. But he's very attuned to the outdoors, very attuned to relationship with the outdoors. And this one struck me as see what you think. I find it quite inspiring. Then delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground. You're young with energy, a path of plenitude opening before you. It just creates that aura of the unexpected, of trying something new, of pushing the boundaries, which I quite like. And then finally, with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek here. So this is a fairly well-known Scottish proverb, which says, "Whiskey may not cure the common cold, but it fails more agreeably than anything else I know." And just a little suggestion right now as we come towards the end of it is I would like to raise a glass, and I know Russell would. I know we'll keep questions going, Michael, but we say in Scotland a word slange, which is the Gaelic, and it's very good. It's Gaelic for health. So if anybody toasts you in Scotland with the word slange, it basically means they're saying good health. So slange to Michael and Amanda and all your travellers, and look forward to seeing you one day as well.
Oh, we appreciate that. Slange to you too. And we'll have to, Amanda, we'll have to make sure that we get that passage from John O'Donoghue into our follow-up email and even onto the website. Honestly, I think it'd be great for our destination page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have it on there. So
if you could share that with me, that would be fantastic.
Awesome. Cool. Great. Ken, Russell, thanks so much. So we got a couple minutes left. I want to dive into some rapid fire questions, guys. 1 word or 1 phrase answers, no thought. Let's just hit it. Russell, I'm going to start with you, but both of you answer, but Russell, take this one first. If you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why?
I would go to Sandwood Bay on Scotland's west coast because it's pure escapism and has some of the best surf in the world.
Ken?
For me, Michael, Shetland, one of my favourite trips of the whole year to go up there. It's where my parents originally came from. A wonderful place, wonderful people.
Awesome. Ken, what has been your favorite or most memorable meal that you've had while traveling?
Oh my goodness. I was fortunate enough 2 years ago on an extremely high-end trip to go to the Glen Eagles Hotel. Golfers will maybe recognize that name. And there was a restaurant within Glen Eagles called the Andrew Fairley Restaurant. And I will never in my life again experience service like it. A waitress was looking after me and me alone, as every other member of the table had their own waiter or waitress.
Wow. Russell?
Probably the opposite end of the spectrum, but probably no less tasty. The local fish and chip shop in Ullapool on the way home from a trip. Phenomenal fresh seafood at an affordable price, but not to be missed. Fish and chips at its best.
Oh, I
From the
love
local chippy.
Exactly.
All right, Russell, what's one essential item that you always bring with you on your travels?
I've made this mistake before, Michael, so I know the answer. It's a bottle of scotch. I went to Argentina without the bottle of scotch, and no one let me forget it, being from Scotland. So
Fair enough. What about you, Ken?
Yeah, it has to be my alarm clock, Michael, without a shadow of doubt. And it's not actually to wake me up in the morning, ironically, because I'm usually awake before it. But I have this comfort zone desire to know what time it is at any time of the night. So I glance over at my alarm clock for that one, and it sends me back to sleep.
And it's not, you're not looking at your iPhone. It's actually an alarm clock that you bring with you.
It is actually a good old, I should have now known it, yeah. It's a good old fashioned round face TikTok. In fact, if I'm co-guiding with anybody, the other guide in the room normally tries to throw it out the window because it's got a very loud TikTok going on there, but it works in my head, but not everybody else's, obviously.
Oh, funny. Russell, I'm going to throw it back to you for this one. If you were to summarize Scotland in one word or phrase, what would that be?
I'd say one word or phrase, Michael, I would say unexpectedly beautiful and diverse.
Ken?
I have to say it's the place of the people.
I love it. Guys, thank you. Thank you very much. Amanda, do we want to mention well, I'm already going to tease it. So yeah, let's talk quickly about the adult study abroad idea that we've got. Do you want to do that?
Sure. Yes, it's very exciting. So we haven't mentioned it before. Similar to our small group journeys, it would be a small group of 6 to 10 travelers being based in a particular city for a month, and then doing excursions and having cooking classes and lectures and locals coming to talk with the group, and weekend visits away to other areas, but having one central location to base, whether it's Edinburgh or Inverness, or we haven't worked out the details of where exactly in Scotland, but Scotland is definitely going to be one of our first options, coming in May of 2022. So stay tuned for more details on that. We are working on that as we speak, and are very, very excited about a new option for those who are either on sabbatical or have the ability to work remotely, which we've discovered more and more people are able to do these days. So we're really excited to take advantage of that and offer a new opportunity for those looking for a small group adventure that is more has more of a home feel to it in a new location.
Yeah, yeah. These are we're super pumped about these, and super excited that Scotland is going to be one of our first adult study abroad destinations. And again, it's just, as you said, Amanda, it's a chance to dive deeply into a culture, connect with people, you know, build meaningful relationships, but also have time to explore, and you know, everything from poetry and literature to golf to, you know, fishing, hiking, you know, crafts, and all these other food experiences, whiskey tastings, all of it, and more, and all done within a really small, you know, close-knit community of travelers. So, so with that, Ken, Russell, thank you guys so very, very much. It was a pleasure to have you, and we appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
If people want to ask any questions, that they've got a follow-up, that they want to connect with you, they can please feel free to do so by sending us an email to scotland@explorer-x.com, or just more generically at hello@explorer-x.com. And we'll be happy to answer those questions and route them to Russell and Ken as appropriate. Next week, for our Wisdom and Wanderlust, we're going to be joined by our good friend Lena, who's going to walk us through a conversation about cultural awareness as a critical component of the overall travel experience. And that'll be at noon next Wednesday, noon Pacific time next Wednesday. So we hope to see you there. Again, follow us on social media at GoExploreX. Learn more about us on our website, explorer-x.com. And Russell, Ken, and Amanda, again, thank you guys very much. It was a pleasure to have you. Have a good day, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.